6:30. Well, we're doing 2 chapters tonight, and this is the last Bible study of the year of 2025 here. And in keeping with that, kind of wrapping things up. So first off, this is the trivia prize tonight. It is a crock pot ornament that says Croc Star on it. And it's got a little spoon on the top there. And everybody's got a pretty good shot at this because it's not truly trivia. It's an interesting retrospective kind of question. Since we started doing this Bible study, Genesis chapter 1, way back in February of 2022, we've gone one verse at a time through the Bible, and we're up to 2 Samuel chapter 3 tonight. How many chapters have we covered? Well, you don't need to know. This is a guess. That's why everybody's got a good shot at it. I mean, you could go and add it all up, but 73, 65, 116, 200, 90. Everybody got their guesses in? 113? 72, 151, 95. Guys, there's like 50 chapters in Genesis alone.
Yeah, this is true. All right, 210.
210, 300, 275. All the guesses in? 269. Oh, now. Did you chat GPT that?
He, in fact, is not the croc star.
You had 275? Well, all right. No. No, I don't. You don't. Then that goes in a box and sits in your attic and you get it out next year. I don't want that chili. All right. Y'all bow your heads with me. Let's open in a word of prayer. Father God, we are so thankful for this evening together. We're thankful for the group of souls you've gathered here this evening, the love that's in this room, and the reason that we've gathered here. God, we ask that you would bind us together in these evenings, that you would move among us tonight, that your word would be opened up and made manifest to us, and that it would change us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so no further ado. 2 Samuel chapter 3, looking at the first 5 verses. Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. And unto David were sons born in Hebron, and his firstborn was Amnon of Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and his second was Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite, and the third Absalom the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai king of Geshur, and the fourth Adonijah the son of Haggith, and the fifth Shephatiah the son of Abital, and the sixth Ithream by Eglah David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. So first off, when it says there was a long war, we don't imagine that to say that there were like repeated battles and great casualties or something like that. And, generals constantly moving little pieces across a map like you see in so many movies here. It's a Cold War, more or less. It's a period of hostility. The kingdoms are set against each other. You have David in Judah. You have Ishbosheth set up as king over everything else by his general Abner. And what's happening, though, is things are not exactly working out well. David is growing stronger in people, stronger in notoriety. Ishbosheth was appointed by no merit of his own except for bloodline, where David was appointed by God, and the people favored him. And they're gradually leaving the house of Saul, ruled by Ishbosheth, to flock to the banner of King David in Hebron. And while this is happening, David is building himself quite the royal family. Now, it is against Jewish law to multiply wives. We remember that. That's back from Deuteronomy. It says don't get a whole bunch of horses, because your strength is not in chariots and horses, and you're not to multiply wives. You're not to seek after gold and silver. That was where the edicts laid out to the king way back in Deuteronomy, when God looked at the children of Israel and said, I know one of these days these people are going to say, we want a king. And so way back in Deuteronomy, Moses laid out, this is what your king is supposed to not do. These are the prohibitions on your king. So that is on the books, but even still, it's put in here by the author to show David's prosperity, just how good he's doing at life, at being king. We've seen David's wives, Ahinoam and Abigail, but look, we get added to the list. Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur, a foreign princess from a land very near Ishbosheth's capital city. And then we see mentioned Haggith, Abital, and Eglah. And we don't know if they're all political arrangements or if David found himself smitten with these women, walking down the road one day, whatever. David wifed up and he had 6 kids. So he is growing up there in Hebron. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's okay. So going on.
I have a curious question.
All right.
God communicated a lot with David through Samuel and Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
Why does God not ever say anything to him about having so many wives?
I don't know that he did. It's not recorded that he did it. I don't know that he did or not, and it's just not written down. I don't know.
I know it's a question you can answer.
It's one of those odd lines between something that is culturally accepted, especially for a king, and then at the same time prohibited formally within the religion.
Well, look at all the things that are culturally
That's what I'm saying.
accepted
That's
today.
there are a lot of churches out there, and probably even a lot of good preachers that are going to disagree about things. There's so many cultural issues out there that one preacher will come down on one side, one will come down on the other side. Maybe they're great men of God. Maybe if they really looked at it and searched their heart and tried to make a decision about it, they'd come down on the right decision. More than likely, they're just happy with the cultural norm and taking advantage of it.
The cultural norm is same-sex marriage and abortion.
Yeah, but 50 years from now, a preacher may not even think of that. You know what I mean? It may not even, I know it's sad. Yeah, I don't agree with it. But norms are such that we get desensitized to them over the years. Things that are scandalous now, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, weren't even conceived of being possible. And the things that were scandalous then, we don't even. I see women wear red in church.
Our concept of marriage and husband and wife is so much different than it was in the ancient world. I mean, it's night and day. I don't mean to sound hard, but women were property.
And a lot of this was political
And so if
position.
you were a very wealthy man, you had a lot of property, right? Love as we know it was not really a thing in the ancient world. What? I mean, everything is.
Somewhere, surely there was true love.
Well, I'm sure there was some, but it was
It's
different.
not like we don't, but 79th Methodist Church, when was it, kicked the woman out for wearing red shoes?
That's what I was talking
So
about.
I was in the attic one day reading old books. I found the old church records from the 1800s. And there was a woman who wore a pair of red shoes to church, and they literally escorted her out of church for wearing red shoes. That was very
Scandalous at the
hard
time.
to read, and that was a very bad thing. You didn't do that.
So again, culturally accepted now, scandalous at the time. You don't know what things look like in 100 years.
There's nothing in the Bible about red shoes.
No, there's nothing in the Bible about red shoes. There's stuff in the Bible about women dressing modestly.
There's a lot of things that are acceptable. It's not.
I mean, that's, again, I don't know
where you're at.
I think we just get desensitized to it though.
Yeah.
All the time.
No, that's exactly what it
I mean,
is.
it still makes it wrong, God said don't do it, but everybody just ignores it.
A lot of the
And
time.
I hate that.
And I mean, some of it is sin, and it's a hard moral question, and we come down on it. And I don't think I don't think the Southern Church will ever get desensitized completely to same-sex marriage or abortion, or the real hot-button issues. But there is a dial on some issues out there that again seem scandalous at the outset, and then you just grow desensitized to them, and they're not purely moral questions.
I say woe to our nation.
Yeah, I know.
We're desensitized to language. Because
Completely.
some of the foul language that now it's, 25 years ago, your jaw would drop, and now it's just like, you sit in a restaurant, the booth behind you is using all.
I wrote a book report in 7th grade, 8th grade, Karen Wilson, Denison High School, and used the phrase screw it up. I was afraid that he would come in and screw it up, and she red penned that thing into oblivion about yes, the phrase screw it up.
Yeah, but who's the teacher?
Karen Wilson.
Oh.
Oh, and she's a sweet woman, but yeah, she is,
Can you imagine?
Older values.
John Wesley were to show up today, I mean, wow, that's gonna be such a.
they'd say, hold on a second, let me go back to my car and come back with a can of gasoline and a box of matches. All right.
We're making progress though.
So some of the waxing stronger that's described in verse 1 here is political allies. It's David reaching out to other nations, forming relationships of foreign kings, having children with those women just so that they can bind the kingdoms together, and that does by default draw strength away from Ishbosheth. Again, it's not approved of in the Bible. It's not a prescription. This is a description. Polygamy was formally prohibited by law, but it is still recognized as a custom, especially, among royalty there. Verses 6 through 11. And it came to pass, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, Wherefore hast thou gone in unto my father's concubine? Then was Abner very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, Am I a dog's head, which against Judah do show kindness this day unto the house of Saul thy father, to his brethren and to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hand of David, that thou chargest me today with a fault concerning this woman? So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord hath sworn to David. Even so I do to him, to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul, and set up the throne of David over Israel, and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba. And he could not answer Abner a word again, because he feared him. So that is some complicated King James writing there. So let's break it down just a little bit. First off, do not lose track of who we're talking about, because we're going to be throwing around a whole bunch of names here. Abner is the general for Ishbosheth. So he's the one who last week killed Asahel, found his army beaten, had a whole bunch of Benjamites rally around him to defend him, and then he shouted out at Joab, and Joab is the general of David's army. He said, we need to stop, or Israel's going to be crippled because we're going to kill so many people. That same Abner that I've previously described as opportunistic and a bit of a manipulator, guess what we see here? It says Abner senses the weakness of Ishbosheth, and he begins to maneuver himself more and more politically to take on more of a role in the kingdom. He is making himself, how do they phrase it? Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. He is strengthening his position politically in here. He's holding the meetings, greasing the palms, keeping up all the relationships, the whole time, grinning at people, saying, yeah, he is the king, but we know who's really in charge, that kind of thing. Now, while that's happening, while Abner is positioning himself in the kingdom, he gets in a fight with King Ishbosheth because the king accused Abner of laying with one of King Saul's concubines, one of his dad's concubines. And that's no small matter, because the harem of a king in the Arab nations would go from predecessor to the line of succession. Whoever replaces them as king would inherit that harem as property. To lay with one of the harem is to take something that belongs to the king. It's essentially, it is to assert a claim on the throne. Is to set yourself up as being equal with a king, that you have a right to take something like this. So Ishbosheth, in his insecurity, is accusing him of undermining him, of laying claim to the throne. He doesn't care anything about the woman, really. He's worried that his general is taking liberties that are reserved only for the king. And it's such a severe accusation that it drove Abner to extreme anger. And what follows the accusation does not really translate well, but Abner replies to Ishbosheth, "Am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah?" That's to say, am I some gross object too low to lay with a royal concubine? Am I some disgusting thing that belongs to your enemy? Have I not shown kindness to you and all your house by delivering you into the hands of David? I've kept you away from all that, and now you go accusing me of some fault with this woman. Then Abner says, "So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord hath sworn to David, even so I do to him." And to understand that, we need to break that down into two parts. The "so do God to Abner, and more also," we've seen that formula. All right, that's the typical oath. We've heard that before. It's formulaically saying, "I swear, so do God more to me, and more also if I don't." That's just him adding emphasis to it. But then he says, "Except as the Lord hath sworn to David, even so I do to him." What he's saying there is, God strike me down if I don't facilitate what God has sworn to do to David, which is to set him, and we don't get God actually expressing that as a verbal vow or acknowledgement that he's given to the people, but everybody is on that same page that David is going to be king. It's inevitable. So this is him looking at his king and saying, "I swear, because of what you've said, God, do to me worse also if I don't do exactly what God has said he's going to do for David. I'm going to set him up as king. God has sworn the kingdom to David. I'm going to make sure that he gets it. So, as the Lord has sworn to David, even so I do for him." If you change that preposition, that makes so much more sense on there. All right, not to him, but even so I do for him exactly what God swore to do for him. I'm going to do it. I'm going to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul to the throne of David, just as God said, and make him king over not just Judah, but all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba. That means from the top to the bottom. And Ishbosheth is so struck by the words, he just couldn't answer Abner. He feared him. He feared him because, again, this king was only appointed by his bloodline. And who appointed him? It was Abner. While David was moving into Hebron, Abner went and got him, the only son who was not involved with the battle, and set him up and then started maneuvering him around to gather the power there. So Abner's the one that set him up. Abner's the one that's about to take him down now. So the same one who put him in power says it's over. Ishbosheth is greatly afraid, and rightly so, because he's got no more cards to play. His reign is about to be over, and he can either fight it or he can go with it. Verses 12 through 16. "And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, Whose is the land? Saying also, Make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee to bring about all Israel unto thee. And he said, Well, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, Deliver me my wife Michal, which I espoused to me for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, even from Phaltiel, the son of Laish. And her husband went with her along, weeping behind her to Bahurim. Then said Abner unto him, Go, return. And he returned. So there's true love in the Bible. Look at that. That guy running after his wife, all weeping and everything. So Abner gets right to it. He sent messengers to David. He said, Hey, man, we're not doing too well over here. If you want the land, if you want to end all this, then let's make it happen. You partner up with me, and together we will bring all of Israel under your rule. And David says, Well, which it's not well, ... It's good. That sounds great. He's saying good. Now, I'll gladly partner up with you. I need one thing. I want my wife, Michal, back. Now, asking for Michal which you remember, that was his first wife. Saul wanted to keep sending David out into to fight the Philistines, hoping that David would just naturally die of natural Philistine causes while he's out there. And eventually he said, you know what, I'll give you Michal because I owe you a wife. Don't worry about not having a dowry. Just get me 100 Philistine foreskins. And David went out and he did it. And then he brings him back and he gets Michal. But Saul gets so cross with him that David has to flee before he can ever really settle down and start a family there. And then while he's on the run, he gets word that King Saul gave that woman to another man, more than likely in exchange for a large dowry. Again, Saul was a little greedy. But we get word while David is south on the run in the wilderness that his wife has been taken from him and given to another man. So asking for Michal back, yes, he more than likely had affection for her. She loved him by her own admission back at the very beginning. She saw him rising to power right after he had slain Goliath, and it said specifically that she loved him or liked him. I can't remember how they actually phrased it. So he wants her back for at least personal reasons, but much more than that. When Saul gave Michal to another man as wife, it was a public shaming. It was a public event. Everybody knew about it. He was doing it to delegitimize David's claim to the throne. He was saying this man is not fit to marry a royal daughter and be in line for such an office. And David knows that Abner, the general, doesn't have the authority to remove Michal from her current husband. It would have to be King Ishbosheth. One king took it from David, gave him to Phaltiel. Another one's going to have to take it from Phaltiel and give it back to David. So David is saying, before I will meet with you again to move this transition along, I want my wife back, because it's a public and humbling declaration from King Ishbosheth that he is acquiescing to David's demand. Like I said, he's got no more cards to play. He can either fight it or go with it, and you can't fight it when your general's the one wanting to set this thing up, so he's got to go with it. So Abner delivered the message, or the messengers went with Abner back to Ishbosheth. However it was, the demand was made, and Ishbosheth did it. He took Michal from Phaltiel, who more than likely, again, had paid a generous dowry to Saul, and genuinely seems to have fallen in love with the woman, which it would have been about 8 or 9 years, their marriage. So he's so attached to her that he follows after her, weeping, holding on to every last moment with her that he could, and it's a sad image, but it's also a marriage that never should have been.
It's a shame to him also.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a wife and before taking her. There's a lot of property here on all sides.
I bet she wasn't wearing red, so at the very least, a respectable woman.
Yeah.
So Michal is going on to a future king that she at least once loved, probably still has some affection for, but Phaltiel gets nothing. He's out the dowry. He's invested 8-9 years worth of marriage into building this life, and it's gone. And when they arrive, we're not given any kind of a detail of the teary goodbye. Abner just tells him get out, and the dude leaves, because when a general tells you leave, you do it. Verses 17 through 21. And Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, Ye sought for David in times past to be king over you. Now then do it. For the Lord hath spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies. And Abner also spake in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him, and David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said unto David, I will arise and go, and will gather all Israel unto my lord the king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou mayest reign over all that thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So Abner goes about the business of rallying all the elders of Israel to David, which you wouldn't think would be a hard sell. I think it would have to be a harder pitch telling all of them that Ishbosheth should take the throne, initially. So that was the real sales job back then. They're all counting their gold from David pillaging the Arab raiders and then sending carts of it up north. You remember that? Well, he's down in Ziklag, and they go off to fight, and then they come back, and Ziklag's been burnt with fire, and all the stuff was taken, and they go and they find the slave boy who it was near death, and they nurse him back to health, and they say, where are the raiders? And then when they get over there, they had so much loot from taking over these people that he was shoveling it by the wagon load and sending it north to different cities. And again, I said back then, it's a brilliant move. He's keeping up relations. He keeps telling these people, I'm not in power yet, but remember me, I'm down here. And now Abner doesn't have that hard of a job going around to all these people and saying, you wanted David before? Guess what? He's back in town. Ishbosheth is on the way out. I'm rallying everybody, and I imagine they're all just like, yep, show me where I sign. So he goes back and he says all of the kingdom with Ishbosheth, it's not working out. We're going with the guy that God has picked, the guy that sent all the gold. And Abner hit up all the elders, hit up the militant Benjamites, the ones who had most recently had been the last few survivors of the war with Joab, the battle between Joab and Abner. And then Abner set out for David in Hebron, tell him everybody's on board, there's no holdouts, not even the Benjamites. We've got everybody saying this sounds great. David received Abner peaceably. I'm sure he's overjoyed at the news. He prepared a feast for Abner and the 20 men that had traveled with him. And after the feast, Abner told David, all right, I'm going to go finish this thing. You'll be king over the land of Israel, all the land of Israel, over everything that your heart desires. And with that, David sends him away in peace. Now, verse 22 through 25. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop, and brought in a great spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. When Joab and all the host that was with him were come, they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he hath sent him away, and he is gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away, and he is quite gone? Thou knowest Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know why thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. So just as soon as this feast is over, and they have sent him away in peace, Joab comes riding in. Joab, David's general, comes riding in, and they have just chased down a band of raiders, and they have a great spoil with them, and they're all celebrating, they're victorious, and they've got a wagon of treasure with them, and that's great. But it doesn't take long that Joab, again, who is David's nephew, as David had his sister Zeruiah, she had 3 kids. The oldest of them is Joab. We've got Joab, Asahel, and Abishai, and this is Joab coming in. And when Joab gets back to base, he hears, I don't know, from a servant, through the grapevine, whatever, Abner, the general of Ishbosheth's army, the guy who killed your brother Asahel, was just here. You just missed him. And there wasn't any drama. He came here, he talked with David, and then he left in peace. I don't know what's going on, but the dude who killed your brother was just here, and he just left peaceably. And from his reaction, it is apparent that David has been entertaining Abner's help this whole time without Joab knowing. So Joab is quite upset, and he goes to David as soon as he hears, and he says, What have you done? You sent him away. That guy's no good. All he's doing is coming here to spy on you and to lie to you and to see what we've got going on in this whole operation. Verses 26 through 30. And when Joab was come out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sirah, but David knew it not. And when Abner was returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly, and smote him there under the 5th rib, that he died for the blood of Asahel his brother. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue, or that is a leper, or that leaneth on a staff, or that falleth on the sword, or that lacketh bread. So Joab and Abishai his brother slew Abner, because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. So Joab leaves David, and he sends a messenger to Abner and telling him, come back. We forgot something. Whatever, I don't know. You left your gift bag. You forgot to get, whatever it was. He says, you need to come back. They concoct some reason. Who knows what they told him. Abner returns to Hebron at their request. And again, he had just left, because where they find him at that well, that's just outside the city. So he turns right around. And when he returns to Hebron, Joab is there. Abner has no reason to suspect anything. He doesn't know that David has been keeping this all from Joab this whole time. He has no reason to think that David has kept these dealings secret. And Joab takes Abner to a private place in the outer gate of the city under the pretense of needing to speak with him. And there he stabs him to death. Not just him, but in verse 30 it says, so Joab and Abishai, his brother, slew Abner. So the two of them did it. Joab was probably the ringleader of it, but the two of them stabbed him to death. And this is the second time here where we see the phrase under the fifth rib. The first was Abner stabbing Asahel. You remember Asahel was the one that's fleet-footed like a deer, and they're all running through the battle, and Abner keeps saying, stop, I don't want to deal with your brother. Turn around, find somebody else's armor, and then he just stabs backwards with his spear, and it says under the fifth rib right there. That's a phrase that really just, it's not, they're not experts in anatomy that have studied, the medical history or whatever for years and years. That's just saying in the abdomen. They stabbed him in the abdomen there. It's a phrase that just means stabbing in the body. Joab, David's general, stabbed Abner as vengeance for Asahel, his brother, and verse 30 tells us that Abishai helped him do it. And when David heard of the murder, he completely disavows the act. He pronounced that David and the king, they had no part in this. The kingdom had no part in this. They have no guilt in it. What had happened, him killing his brother in that battle, was in battle. And more than that, Abner was yelling to the guy while they're in battle, I don't want to do this. David is saying this man is completely upright. He's completely blameless in this whole situation. And Joab let it all be on him and on his household here. And he cursed the house of Joab there. That's what the very last bit right is, verse 29. It says, let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house. Let there not fail from the house of Joab. What he's saying there is, don't let there be one man in the house of Joab that doesn't have one of the following afflictions. All those men need to be lepers, crippled up, leaning on a staff, falling on the sword, or begging for bread in the streets.
Does him saying that mean it's gonna happen?
No, it's a curse. He doesn't have any divine power to bring it to pass. But verses 31 through 39, the last bit of the chapter here. And David said to Joab and to all the people that were with him, rend your clothes and gird you with sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And King David himself followed the bier, and they buried Abner in Hebron. And the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented over Abner and said, died Abner as a fool dieth? Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put into feathers. As a man falleth before wicked men, so fallest thou. And all the people wept again over him. And when all the people came to cause David to eat meat while it was yet day, David sware, saying, so do God to me, and more also, there's that phrase again, if I taste bread or aught else till the sun be down. And all the people took notice of it and pleased them, as whosoever the king did pleased all the people. For all the people in all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to slay Abner the son of Ner. And the king said unto his servants, know ye not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? And I am this day weak, though anointed king. And these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. So after the murder, David declares a public mourning. He commanded Joab and all his soldiers, he said, tear your clothes and put on sackcloth, mourn for Abner, mourn for the man that you just murdered. And King David himself followed the bier, that word means the actual pallet that bore the body through the streets. King David was following that as it proceeded through the city, which is not something a king would normally do, but he was so moved by the unrighteousness of this murder that he followed it through the city and then wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people followed suit. And David, in what seems to be this like graveside lament, he cries out, did Abner die as a fool dies? Did he deserve this? Was he not an honorable man? He wasn't a prisoner. He hadn't committed any crime deserving of this kind of a punishment. He killed someone in battle, and he did it reluctantly, and he didn't deserve to be drawn into the gate and then stabbed like this. And the people saw David taking Abner's death pretty hard, and they sought to comfort him with food, but David wasn't going to have it. He said, I'm mourning. We're fasting. There's plenty of time to eat when the sun goes down, but now we're going to reflect on this life that's been taken in such a horrible way. And then the last verse 39, is interesting. It says, and I am this day weak, though anointed king. And these men, the son of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. So a great evil has been done in David's eyes. And even though he's king, he recognizes that the people who did this heinous act have the loyalty of the army. And David is in too weak a position to punish them as he feels like he should. These men are too hard for him, is what he's saying. These guys, these are the military officials. What they've done is wrong, but I can't do. I'm king, but I'm actually weak right now because I'm only just now gathering all of this strength, and they have the loyalty of the military behind them. So he turns it over to God. The very last part there, the Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. I can't give them the punishment that they deserve, but I trust that God will punish them in the future.
I think Abner also was delivering this alliance, bringing the tribes into David. If it appeared that David had anything to do with or was happy that Abner was murdered, it could shatter that alliance and he could lose these tribes that were coming in. So it was very important for him to follow the buyer and to mourn and to do these things publicly so that this alliance would remain.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe David genuinely mourned Abner. Maybe he didn't really care, but publicly he kind of had to do that. There's some politics involved.
Well, that's so the very next verse, chapter 4, verse 1. And when Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. All right, that when Ishbosheth hears what's happened to his general, Abner, he gets shaky because Abner was facilitating this peaceful transition of power. He was keeping everybody in line as they went from one king to another. Now, who knows what's going to happen? The Israelites were troubled. That's to say that the men that had been negotiating with Abner to pledge loyalty to David are now in utter confusion because they don't rightly know where they are at in that process. If Ishbosheth is still carrying that out, or if Ishbosheth might turn and seek their heads for entertaining the notion now that the main guy who was set trying to remove him and give power to David is out of the way. So it's a period of turmoil right here. Verses 2 and 3. And Saul's son had two men, that's Ishbosheth, had two men that were captains of bands. The name of one was Baanah, and the name of the other was Rechab, the sons of Rimmon, a Beerothite of the children of Benjamin, where Beeroth also was reckoned to Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled to get him and were sojourners there until this day. These two verses, this is just a character introduction. This is saying the author is going out of his way to say that they're out of two of Ishbosheth's own captains. There's two of them. Both of them were Benjamites just like Ishbosheth, and they're about to do something. Verse 4, And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. He was 5 years old when the tidings came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. Another character introduction. This one's important, but later on, Ishbosheth had a son, Jonathan had a son whose name was Mephibosheth. And he's still in the care of a nanny whenever the great battle between the Philistines and Saul was waged. And when news reached the royal house that Saul and Jonathan, the boy's father, were both killed in battle, the nanny in charge of Mephibosheth gathered him up at 5 years old, mind you. So he's walking, but she gathered him up and she made a run for it. because she was worried about what might happen given that Saul and Jonathan had died. And she must have made an absolute utter mess out of their departure. I don't know if she fell down stairs or if she dropped him off a wall, because she's holding a 5-year-old in her arms, which is, I mean, that's a pretty strong kind kid for the most part. She fell, the two of them fell. We don't know what happened there, but when she picked her up and the child up, he was lame. She had messed up both his feet. I don't know if she fell on him or if she dropped him down a wall and he landed on his feet like a cat, and that was a bad decision. But he was lame from that point forward. And all this is mentioned to illustrate that Saul's line would be practically ended after Mephibosheth, a man who, though able, was not going to father any children. Verses 5 through 7. Now we get back to the narrative here. And the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, went and came out about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, who lay on a bed at noon. And they came thither into the midst of the house as though they would have fetched wheat, and they smote him under the 5th rib. Same thing, they're just saying in the avenue. And Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. For when they came into the house, he lay on his bed in his bedchamber, and they smote him and slew him and beheaded him and took his head and gat them away through the plain all night. So the two men of Abner, generals, they each have bands, so maybe they're more like mercenary leaders, warlords, kind of like that. They served under King Ishbosheth. They took it upon themselves to go to their king's house at noon in the heat of the day, when the king might well have been taking a nap, because they do that every now and then in that culture. And they came as they were accustomed to gather grain for their soldiers, and when they had snuck in without any kind of suspicion, not raising any alarms, they go into Ishbosheth's bedroom, and they stab him while he lay in his bed, and then they took his head, and they both escaped without notice, and they had to have been there at least a little while, because they didn't just stab him, they beheaded him, which is not like it is in the ninja movies or something, where it's just one solid. No, it's an ordeal. And they kill the guy, they take his head, and then they escape, I assume after cleaning themselves up at the very least, so that they're not going to arouse suspicion on their way out of town, and we don't know. Verses 8 through 12. And they brought the head of Ishbosheth unto David to Hebron, and said to the king, Behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, thine enemy, which sought thy life. And the Lord hath avenged my lord the king this day of Saul and of his seed. And David answered Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said unto them, As the Lord liveth, who hath redeemed my soul out of all adversity, when one told me, saying, Behold, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good tidings, I took hold of him and slew him in Ziklag. Who thought that I would have given him a reward for his tidings? How much more, when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house upon his bed, shall I not therefore now require his blood of your hand and take you away from the earth? And David commanded his young men, and they slew them, and cut off their hands and their feet, and hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. So these two geniuses, Rechab and Baanah, decide to take the head of Ishbosheth to King David. Ishbosheth, who has done nothing wrong at all. They fought a little bit at one point, one battle that we actually have recorded there, but aside from that, they've each just kind of kept to themselves. And they have much the same story as the previous messenger who entered David's camp, but this time it's not a lie. That guy had said, hey, the king asked me to kill him, and I did it for you, and here's the crown and his bracelet. They actually snuck in and killed the sitting king and then beheaded them, and they're oh so proud of themselves, and they come into the royal halls of King David in Hebron, presumably with a basket or a bag or something like that with the head of King Ishbosheth in it, and they tell David the story of what's transpired, and David answers in verse 9, wow, guys, by my God who has brought me through all adversity, I don't believe what I'm seeing. And I'm sure those two brothers, just like the last, they had smiles on their faces, and they're very happy, and they're oh so proud of what they've done, the initiative. That's the word for it. We took some real initiative today. We're moving up the ladder. But then David starts talking, and what does he say? He says, guys, I remember the last time Somebody came to me expecting a reward for killing one of my enemies. It wasn't right then, and it's not right now. I can't believe you guys. Last time it was a man who had hunted me for years, and when I heard of his death, I killed the man who claimed to have done it. Now it's two wicked men who snuck into the house of the king, a king who didn't deserve to be killed, and killed him in his own bedroom on his bed. I killed the last guy. How much worse when wicked men have killed someone who is righteous in his own house on his own bed shall I treat the two of you? And David commanded some of the soldiers at his side not only to kill the two men, but they shamed them as well. They cut off their hands, they cut off their feet, and they hung them as decoration over the pool in Hebron as a warning. That's not a wicked thing. What these two men did was a wicked thing. Their lives were forfeit. And then they took the head of Ishbosheth, who had done no wrong, and they buried it in the sepulcher of Abner, his general, who they had just buried there. And I thought that would take a little more time, but that's it. That's chapters 3 and 4 of 2 Samuel. And I'm tired. I'm not doing this anymore this year.